Okay, the Dow down 269 points. The S&P 500 up 42 points, up 0.72%. 58.86 was the close. NASDAQ up 1.61%. Over 300 points. The Russell was up about 0.5%, and the VIX was down almost 1% to 18.22. The S&P closes higher, wiping out the entire loss for 2025. Yes, we're likely going to see some kind of pullback. We're going to go make new all-time highs. I remain extremely bullish on the market. NVIDIA helped out the NASDAQ. Powerful move on the NASDAQ since the bottom. NASDAQ 100, NVIDIA 5.6%. The company would send 18,000 of its artificial chips, AI chips, to Saudi Arabia. We saw the chip sector rally. The AI stocks and tech-heavy NASDAQ. Again, NVIDIA rallied up over 5% today, jumping above the 200 period moving average. Now the 50 is still way down here. It's likely going to begin to curl back up. We've got the 10 above the 50. The 20 is likely going to do it here in the next day or two before the weekends. We've now risen after dropping 43.5%. We are now up 52% from that low. That rally wasn't going to happen. Told you back at the bottom. Everybody says a crash is about to happen. Black Friday crash, you're likely bottoming. People weren't saying it back up at the top. They get very bearish at the bottom. They get very bullish at the top. And we're probably going to see some kind of pullback. You got gaps now. You have a gap today. You have gaps yesterday. You've got some gaps in here. We're probably going to see some kind of pullback. The 50-period moving averages. That's likely going to be the case. Bitcoin's likely going to do the same thing. You got a good shot that we could see it this week in the near future. The question is, do we have parabolic wave 3s going on or still carving out a 5-way push higher? Again, we're eventually going to get these 50s back above the 200-period moving averages, and at some point you're pulled back towards the 50-period moving average. Nice rise on NVIDIA to the 200-period, up 52%. That was not supposed to happen. Quickly, here is the Fibonacci retracements for NVIDIA off of the lows. We are now above the 60, gapping above the 61.8 Fibonacci of the entire decline. We're now approaching our 78.6 Fibonacci at 135. Rally continues for NVIDIA, helping the NASDAQ. I'll be watching that. Now, remember, in order to have things bullish, you got to get that 50 back above the 200. Eventually, we're going to likely pull back towards it. But watch the 78.6 Fibonacci, because that might be where we stall on NVIDIA here in the daily time frame. Eventually, like what Bitcoin's already seeing happen, the 50 is curling back up, and eventually it will get back above that 200 period in all likelihood. So be watching. Do we eventually drop back below the 200 towards the 50, and do we, if we do go higher, watch the 135 area at the 78.6 Fibonacci for NVIDIA. Now, yesterday the VIX was down, gapping lower by 16% down to the 200 period moving average here, hitting the lower band. We're under the 200 period. I talked about all of this back over here when the S&P was getting the higher low, that we could see the VIX move back to the 200 period moving average and drop below the 50 period, which is exactly what happened. 10 drop below the 50, the 20 drop below the 50. So again, this is all bullish stuff for the S&P, but we could come back and fill the gap and move towards the 50 period if we see volatility return, if the S&P pulls back. VIX, which predicted this rally, we've had on the S&P 500, as I've talked about. Yesterday, it dropped by 16%. It's predicting an 85% chance that Tuesday or Wednesday we'll have a down day on the S&P that will produce a top or a down day for a pullback. Didn't get it today. The S&P continued to rise. There's an 85% chance we have a down day tomorrow. And if the VIX is wrong, we may get a pullback. We've had a powerful rally. The question is this a 5-way push higher right here, or is this all one big wave 3 that's developing end up going much higher before we complete minor wave 1. For what it's worth, the VIX is predicting a down day tomorrow, 15% chance that will fail, 85% chance that will be correct based on historic closes. Please support the channel with the link directly below that allows me to be able to provide you this information. If you like the charts, you like the indicators, take a moment and support the channel. If you have any sponsors, just a direct relationship with you, I just ask that you partner with me and do what you can to help out rather than getting sponsors and selling you a bunch of stuff you don't need. Attack me all the time. I turn those offers down. I don't want to sell you anything. You take a moment to help out and support the channel. I'd really appreciate that. Thank you for your consideration for that. Now, NASDAQ blew past the 78.6 Fibonacci with today's session. We had that rally. At the top, we had that failed breakout above the December peak there. We couldn't get confirmation and a follow-through. We had a push above it and no confirmation to that. We sold off, lost to 50, lost to 200, got this three-leg push down, and we ended up dropping 25.5%. From that low, now rallied 28.5%, a larger percentage move than what we dropped off of the low. Moving to new highs because that's percentage calculated based off the bottom, the top. Again, could we be completing a 5-leg push higher? I think that's very likely. Again, this first push higher, pullback for 1 and 2, possibly 3, 4 here, or maybe this whole thing's just 3, and we end up coming back down and getting a 4 and a 5 and then something like that. Again, as I've said, we may just try to blow past this 200 period moving average and come up and challenge the higher, maybe even overthrow that. That's certainly possible. But I think it's more likely you're going to set up a lower high. I think that's got better odds of probability. Already now seeing the 50 period flatten out and starting to turn back up. Again, you could come back and fill some of these gaps. Some of these gaps, come back and fill them. We could pull back towards the 50 period moving average. You still have an inverse head and shoulders pattern here, and maybe we get something like a doji tomorrow or something like that. You could still have an inverse head and shoulders here, but it would be kind of an angled neckline. Once we peak, and we got a wide range bar today, we'll be watching. Do we get a doji tomorrow and then end up Thursday selling off with a power or something? It could play out that way. Certainly possible. The Fed down here, we dropped 25.5%. We got a 21% drop on the S&P. The Fed didn't panic. Okay, this is likely the preview of coming attractions. This isn't the drop kick off the bear market. This is the drop that happens before the blow off top. It's very exaggerated because the moves in this bull market have been very exaggerated. NASDAQ had the bursting of the tech bubble. It dropped 42% or so. So you're probably going to go make new highs. And again, if you come back to this area right here, you've got the shot of a head and shoulders that could develop. But I think you're going to end up making new highs. I think we'll end up pulling back towards these 50-period moving averages at some point. And again, listen carefully. We could peak this week, back, get a higher low, and then the big move really comes. This move has been 28.5% so far. A much bigger move. We're going to go make new highs. I think that is very likely going to be the case. Going past the 78.6 Fibonacci, up 28.5%. We'll be watching to see if we get reversal candle pattern, maybe a doji tomorrow, maybe some kind of inside day. However it plays out, we'll be watching. Do we pull back and start filling these gaps? Do we pull back towards the 50 period? I think that's likely. The big move, the big move comes. This is likely just wave 1 of 5 waves higher for intermediate wave 5. Now again, we're blowing past these 200 period moving averages. So I told you, again, it could be up to the 200s and then get a pullback. But I told you the other scenario is that we have an extended wave 3 and we just blow right past these levels. When Bitcoin consolidated near that 200 period moving average, it just started blowing right past it. Do we see the same thing happen? It could. My signals still remain bullish. But if momentum begins to turn, getting a 5-leg push higher here, then we can get the pullback. If we've got a 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 5, but this all could just be an extended 3 right here, not yet completing the 5-leg push higher. This could just be the extended 3. It would mean minor wave 1 going to even get bigger. So again, the signals remain bullish. The rally that I predicted, I told you we're going to get a massive rally off of the lows. All the market breadth indicators were at extremes and we were hitting major support when everybody was telling us we were going to crash. That's why I told you before we had the rally start, before we had that historic rally right there, before it even happened on the 7th, on the 8th, and on the day of the 9th, social media, when I was posting that we were bottoming with the bar of the 7th, major support levels, was followed by that massive rally, that historic rally, 9.5% in one day. I think it was the second best day in history on the S&P 500. Shot at an inverse head and shoulders, again with the slanted kind of a neckline here. Maybe we get the rally continues tomorrow if we start to pull back. Still very open-minded to this being an extended 3 rather than a 5-leg push higher. Still working on 3. This may not be done yet. Signals still remain bullish. If you start pulling back again, more shallow pullback to the 50, we may end up getting a bigger Fibonacci retracements, as I've talked about previously, looking for clues. Once we peak out, which very well could happen this week if we're completing the 5-leg push higher, as I think is likely going to be the case, but I'm not certain of that because, like I said, it could be a parabolic 3 here. Looking at the Fibonacci's and looking for where price might come back into. But again, the bottom is in. And when we start to sell off, again, the next self, it's funny. Last week, even yesterday, we're saying, comes a crash. They were yelling that last week. Before that, yet we get these gaps higher. And again, remember with the CPI, we just continue to go. Oh, the doji, that's it. And I told you, we got these candlesticks, but they don't mean anything unless they get confirmation and a follow through. At some point, we're going to get a pullback, but my signals correctly predicted the rally, correctly predicted the bottom. And again, when we pull back, it's going to be a higher low. The bears are going to tell us, okay, the rally that they told us wasn't going to happen. This is a bear market rally. The bears got a huge problem because you only have a 3-leg push down here. That's a huge problem. You needed a 5-leg push lower if the top is in. That's why I got so bullish down here. Is because, again, I believe you've completed a 3-leg structure. I've talked about that over and over again. S&P 500 blowing past the 78.6 Fibonacci today. Bitcoin's done that. I still think you can get higher lows or lower highs, lower highs and pull back. Talked about this at great length and detail. I think the same thing for Bitcoin. See my latest Bitcoin video. I'll link it at the end of this one. Eventually, again, we're going to get these 50s curling back up and eventually crossing back above the 200. The death cross likely marked a bottom. The S&P dropped 21, just over 21% here with that decline. We've now risen back up 22.25%. It's a bear market. It's a bear market. We dropped more than 20%. Well, we just rallied more than 20%. Bear market's over. Poppycock. We've had multiple times where we've dropped more than 20% in this longer-term bull market, and the death crosses have marked bottoms when that has happened, associated with the bottom. I talked about this previously. Oh, we had the bear market. It was only, 6.5, 7 weeks here, whatever it was. February 19th peak down to the April low. A bunch of, bear markets in this longer-term bull market. These are just major corrections. And I think you got a good shot that we peak this week and begin to pull back. And maybe that's with Powell. The S&P is up 22.25%, overthrowing the 78.6 Fibonacci and hitting the 200 period moving average and overthrowing that. Now, again, I do believe that we are forming minor wave 1 right here. I think that we have a 5-leg push higher. Again, this final 5th wave could still be forming here. Could complete before the week ends. I think you'll get a pullback. And again, if I move my count out of the way, you can see that 20 is about to get above the 50. Bullish alignment. We're probably going to pull back towards these moving averages, towards the 50-period moving average as they get the bullish realignment and then our higher low. That's likely going to be the case. Have to play out that way if we go parabolic here, but it very well could. But just move this over. You can see the wave count, wave 1, 2, and then I think you're going to see wave 3 take us to new highs above the February peak, 4 and 5. I think this goes into, again, the summer or the fall. I think we get a peak in the market between July and September, and I'm leaning towards August or September. I think we'll begin to see priced in. Got a 3-month extension now on the China tariffs. Again, already had it with the other typical tariffs. All this stuff's coming towards the summer. You're going to see deals reach, but maybe issues with China. Why do I say that? Because we've already had this happen back in 2018 and 19 with the tariffs on China in 2018. Negotiated, made a bunch of promises, and then they didn't keep their word. They didn't do it. These negotiations could end up being problematic for China later on, but you have a 3-month relief rally that gets us to new highs in all likely. So that could still be an issue with China later. Countries you're going to see negotiate deals with the United States. And maybe, and I'm hopeful that China does it. I'm just saying that they have a track record of not cooperating. See tensions in the Middle East in the summer or on into the early fall in the next 3 to 4 months. U.S. and Israel are going to deal with the nuclear threat with Iran. It's going to happen. Iran will get a nuclear weapon in 2026. It's going to happen. It's going to rattle markets. I'm telling you, it's coming. We're going to get the blow off top first. We'll get the recession priced in and concerns about a regional war, World War III, and all this other stuff. It's going to rattle markets. I think you're going to drop down from here real quick back to down here where we bottomed out. And you got a shot at a head and shoulders, and it's going to make this drop look like nothing. What's likely going to happen? My Elliott wave count here, take some divergences, likely give us a pullback. You got it possibly forming on the histogram and the stochastic here. We get my parabolic scenario where we just keep going, and this is a wave 3, then we go 4 and 5, and we come up to the new highs, slightly new highs, and then get it. Or, again, below that level and get it. You could get a divergence right here. I don't know that forms. Have to do that. Form a divergence down here. So I think this is a more likely path that we're completing the wave 1. I think you're going to pull back. But you got a shot that we topped this week. Maybe that's with Powell, some other catalyst, but I think that you're going to see it happen. Again, I had the scenario here where at this 5-leg push lower, that looks to be playing out. Now, a little higher, if we start selling off immediately, then you got a shot at this playing out. We are seeing the RSI move to a new high. You might get a divergence before we get a meaningful pullback. It might be we start to, pull back a little bit, and then we end up forming a little divergence that gives us the pullback. Doesn't have to play out that way. We've had these other little divergences give us a sell-off with the GDP, and here back to the 200 or the 50-period moving average above the cloud. Again, everything playing out as I said it would. Point you're going to get a pullback, but my signals continue to remain bullish, but I'm expecting that at some point we're going to get a pullback. Stochastic's trying to roll over today, so we'll be watching. But again, I've got this potential 5-leg push higher here. I'm looking for a minor wave 1 to complete. It goes a little higher, as I said, with the daily time frame. We'll see. This scenario doesn't play out right here. Then again, you've got a parabolic wave 3 on your hands. You got a good shot at the inverse head and shoulders here. That's what I personally think is likely going to be the case. But like I said, even though we're pulling back, I remain extremely bullish. Trend lines I'm looking at long-term on the S&P, this long-term trend line, was this trend line that I used to call the 2022 peak on the S&P 500 with. Again, do we end up rising towards it, this long-term channel, higher bull market? And again, all these 20% drops in 2011 and 2018 and 2020 and 2022, and then right now, these are major sell-offs, longer-term bull market. But just a trend line I'm paying attention to here with the log, and then we have one with the linear scaling as well that I'm drawing from the 2020 low, another channel that I'm looking at, which is interesting. The log going all the way back. Here's the linear scaling. Now the linear scaling, we bounced off the trend line from the 2020 low, 2022 bottom, 2023 bottom, and we came down and we hit that level, slightly violated it, and hit horizontal support and bounced. That was the April bottom. I think you're getting this 5-leg push higher that's likely going to take us into August or September in all likelihood. There's an interesting channel. If we draw a parallel boundary from this level here, these lows, with the peak right here, and again, it takes you up 67 or 6,800 whenever we reach it. Again, if you take longer to reach it, then you'll be closer to 6,800 or so. But some interesting channels, one from the 2020 low, one going all the way back to the 2009 low with the log scaling. Both of them are pointing up into this area. Kind of interesting. I told you on the NASDAQ to be watching the trend line to see if we end up getting above it and then pull back, clear it all together, or do we get rejection off of it in the 20-period moving average? That's the blue line you see right there, 20-week moving average. Right now we're blowing past it and bouncing off major horizontal support here in the weekly time frame. I think that you have intermediate wave 4 completing on the NASDAQ, and again bouncing just above that 200-week moving average. You got a really nice looking channel here. I think you're getting this powerful move back up. I think it's 1. I think we'll get a pullback for 2, and then you'll get a 3, 4, and a 5. That likely takes us on into August or September, where I think the market is likely going to peak. I got previously above the 50 level on the RSI there, and again the MACD is trying to get a bullish cross this week. We'll be watching. Bitcoin has already done it. Eventually you're going to get these larger divergences, probably going into July, August, or September. Same thing on the 60-minute chart with NASDAQ as S&P. Again, you've got a possible 5-way push higher that might be completing here. May not be done yet if we end up forming a divergence here in this most recent price action. It might be that we have a 1, a 2, a 3, we get a 4, and then get a 5, and then peak out maybe with Powell or later in the week here. If we end up forming a divergence, we don't have to, but it very well could be the case there on the RSI. Divergence is often formed. Got a possible inverse head and shoulder still in play. Again, I'll be watching these gaps, get something a little bigger back to the 200-period moving average. But I told you to expect a big rally because we got the golden cross here in the 60-minute time frame. That was correct. The rally we were told we were never going to have happen. NASDAQ up 1.58% today, up over 300 points. You're getting the bullish alignment here. Again, you're probably going to end up pulling back towards the cloud here in the daily time frame, probably towards the moving averages as they get the bullish alignment, as the 50 begins to rise towards the 200-period moving average and come fill some of these gaps. It was green into the future. So again, I think you have a possible 5-leg push wrapping up here, or done or nearly done, that again will probably give us a pullback or go a little bit higher and a pullback, but could just go parabolic here. You got a good shot. We peak out this week and pull back. But listen, my signals remain bullish. Still a chance that we continue onward and upward. This has been a breathtaking, incredible rally. But as I've said, at some point you're going to pull back, so I'd be watching these moving averages. I'd be watching the cloud here if we begin to do that. And I told you, we might blow past the 200 period and then come back down. We talked about that before we ever got rally back up to just under the 200. I've been talking about these different scenarios. Now, we got those red bars on Friday. Again, we're getting green bars on Monday and Tuesday here. Signals remain bullish. At some point, we're going to get a pullback. I've been talking about the scenarios where we pull back surrounding our 200 or just blow right past it. Had that big gap yesterday for de-escalation day. P jumped up 3%. The rally continues today. Chance, if we are completing a 5-leg push higher here, the scenario that I've talked about, we can pull back and get the wave 2. Bitcoin's going to complete minor wave 1 this week, and there's a good shot that the S&P 500 and NASDAQ attempt to do the same thing. Bitcoin's still going to push a little bit higher, gets the pullback. Starting to see evidence that Bitcoin's getting tied to the S&P was likely going to join the NASDAQ, which got a bullish reversal of conditions in the weekly time frame last week. The S&P is getting it this week. Again, that doesn't mean we can't pull back, but if we close above the cloud here, overthrowing now the 20-period moving average, again, we could still get some kind of pullback towards the 10-week moving average, as long as we don't take out the lower boundary of the cloud. We'll remain green if we close above the upper boundary of the cloud by the end of the week. And if we get a topping tail, begin to pull back in the weekly time frame, as long as we close above the cloud, then again, it could bullish. But again, we'll be watching. Do we pull back? And even if it doesn't, even if we don't close there, say we start to sell off sharply, again, you could still get the cloud flipping going into the future. But again, our second green bar, I talked about those green bars. I told you they would eventually show up. They did last week. seeing momentum trying to shift here in the weekly time frame. The MACD is eventually going to get this bullish cross, or we could pull back and then get the bullish cross if we start pulling back for the week ends, which could very well be the case. The MACD may be prevented from getting a bullish cross. And if that happens, again, we could turn down a little bit and then still end up going back up after a pullback. A pullback would be a healthy thing. If it happens, it would fake the bears out one more time, exploding to new highs, as I've been talking about. I told you, again, we're above the 200-week moving average here in the weekly time frame. We moved back towards it just like 2023. We didn't take it out. In order to have a bear market, you got to take that level out and stay below it, not be able to get back above it. We didn't do that. And now we've recovered. That we were told wasn't going to happen. On here, the media was telling us we're going into the next Great Depression. Bears were going to collapse the economy. Gee, that didn't happen. And the bears told us we were going to have a Black Monday style crash. Kramer said it, and everybody repeated it. The bears repeated it. The herd repeated it. And I told you we were bottoming. That was correct. In this powerful recovery with the NASDAQ weekly time frame, same thing, held above that 200-week moving average. Again, we'll probably get some kind of pullback at some point. Flip the signal here in the weekly time frame back to bullish last week. Again, you can come all the way back down to the lower cloud and still have the weekly chart bullish. Again, we're overthrowing the 20-week moving average. We could come back towards the 10-week very easily. That's the red line right there. And I'm watching, do we get a pullback or a more shallow pullback maybe? We don't have to come and get a deep pullback, but just a shallow pullback and get a right shoulder? Do we just continue to go parabolic? In the bullish cross on the MACD here in the weekly time frame, S&P hasn't quite gotten it yet. Again, I think these MACDs are going to turn back up, and over the summer on into July or August, maybe into September, and I drew that too high, but I think we're going to get this. I think we're going to come up here and we're going to get this lower high. You got this divergence that gave us this sell-off right here of 25.5%. I think you're going to get this larger divergence to complete the topping process. The NASDAQ. The S&P doesn't have the 20 above the 50. We're getting it now with the NASDAQ. And again, you'll be watching yesterday's candle. Well, hanging man, candlesticks mean nothing unless they get confirmation. Now, again, big wide range bar here. Big surge. NASDAQ was up 1.58%, up 330 points rounding up. We got that red bar on Friday, continued to green. Again, it could be we end up forming divergences on the OSM oscillator and the RSI where we pull back. But we are getting divergences on things like the histogram. We are getting divergences there. So we could see a pullback if we are completing the 5-leg push higher.